Hello and welcome back to Eurofootball Daily. On the back of finishing with their lowest points tally in 17 years and failing to reach the Champions League semi-finals for the first time since 2010, Real Madrid clearly needs some major surgery this summer. And here's how they should do it. 5. Sort out their attack. Los Blancos' attack quite simply fell apart last year. Having scored 138 goals across the League, Copa del Rey and Champions League in the 17-18 campaign, a Ronaldo-less Real could only muster 99 this year, 8 fewer than Arsenal managed in the Prem, FA Cup and Europa League. Their shots per game may have dropped from 18.4 to 15.6 last term, but that tally was still the best in the Liga. However, whilst their arch rivals Barcelona may be taking 0.9 fewer shots per game, the quality of their chances is far superior, with expected goals suggesting that the Blaugrana should have scored 14 more league goals than their rivals. Real's main issue was the fact that Gareth Bale's persistent injury saw him miss 9 league games and disrupt his form, meaning that 31-year-old Karim Benzema was forced to shoulder the goal-scoring burden alone. The Frenchman duly delivered, netting 21 league goals, just the third time the former Lyon man has managed that in his 10 seasons in Spain. To put that into context, that is more than Bale, Mariano, Isco, Modric, Lucas Vazquez, Asensio and Brahim Diaz managed between them. But Zidane has acted swiftly and decisively in an effort to solve that, bringing in Eintracht Frankfurt's Luka Jovic for a reported £50 million fee. The 21-year-old Serbian international scored 27 goals in 48 games for Diadla in 18-19, and his arrival is likely to ease the burden on Benzema, who was forced to play 53 games last season, the most in his 15-year career. With the arrival of Hazard, arguably their first Galactico arrival since James Rodriguez in 2014, Zidane has a ready-made star who operated at a 0.7 expected goals and assists per 90 in 18-19. The thought of Eden Hazard playing alongside Jovic, whose 0.65 expected goals per 90 was the 6th best record in Germany last season, is enough to frighten any defence. With more to come from 23-year-old Asensio and 18-year-old Brazilian starlet Vinicius Jr., Real are surely set to top their 63 league goals from last term, their lowest tally this century. 4. Shift the deadwood. If Real are to bring in the 4 or 5 top-class players needed to get them back to the top, they will have to shift some of their underused players this summer. One of the most talked about potential departures is that of Gareth Bale, and it's easy to see why. After starting Zidane's first 2 league games back in charge against Celta Vigo and Huesca, the Welshman only played 293 out of the next 810 minutes to the end of the season. But finding a suitor for the always injured, soon-to-be 30-year-old willing to swallow part or all of his €390,000 per week wages is a different matter entirely. Bale isn't the only player that Florentino Perez should think about moving on though. 29-year-old centre-back Nacho made his first team debut in April 2011, but has only gone on to make 190 appearances in the intermittent 8 full seasons, an average of 24 games per year. Surely the 29-year-old Spaniard has more ambition than being a permanent fixture on the Bernabeu bench. Lucas Vazquez could similarly be shown the door without too many tears shed by the Madristas. He's never scored more than 4 league goals in a single season, and he only contributed 6 goals in 37 league and Champions League games in 18-19. With 2 years remaining on his contract and a transfermarkt valuation of €25 million, Real could collect a tidy sum for the 27-year-old academy graduate. Another player heading for the Bernabeu exit is Colombian star James Rodriguez. The 69-capped Colombian, who won the Golden Boot at the 2014 World Cup, spent the last 2 seasons on loan at Bayern Munich, where his 28 goal contributions in 43 Bundesliga games helped them to back-to-back league titles. But the player labelled as egotistical by the De Rotten legend Lothar Matthäus only completed the full 90 in 4 league games in 18-19, and his reluctancy to work hard defensively saw his side concede 0.3 more goals per game when he was on the pitch. With Isco limited to under 1,200 minutes and seemingly not in Zidane's long-term plans despite operating at 0.6 expected goals plus assists per 90, he could also be facing the chop. According to Transfermarkt, these 5 players combined are valued at €250 million, enough money to bring in a right-sided forward like Jadon Sancho and replace the squad depth they provided. 3. regenerate the midfield. It's no secret that Real are getting older, and nowhere is that more apparent than the midfield. Having club legends in the centre of the park is great most of the time, but sometimes that makes it hard to phase them out, and Real don't even seem to be trying. Toni Kroos is 29, but has recently had his contract extended until 2023, when he will be 33, the same age as Luka Modric is now. The Croatian was once again Real's heartbeat in 2018-19, with only Benzema and Varane playing more minutes than him in La Liga. The two veterans remain exceptional ball progressors, Kroos with his passing and Modric with his dribbling, but the warning signs are there. The former Spurs man still manages nearly 2 take-ons a game in Spain, but at 66% is now recording the worst completion rate of his time at Real Madrid, while his 1.2 dribbles a match in the Champions League is the second lowest of his career, perhaps suggesting that Europe's elite competition has become too energetic for him. Fortunately, Eden Hazard will give Real another way of getting the ball forward, and Zidane can focus on shoring up the midfield, vital given that Kroos and Modric put up 5.5 tackles and deceptions per 90 between them, barely more than Casemiro manages alone. That made Los Blancos more porous than ever, with 10% of their goals they conceded coming from counter-attacks last season, and XG ranking their defence 10th in the Liga, while the team as a whole made just 16.5 tackles and 9.8 interceptions a game, the lowest numbers in both categories since records began in 2009. So Madrid need players to progress the ball and break up play effectively, especially with Seoul and Thomas Partey bringing energy and skill to Atleti's midfield, and Frenkie de Jong set to rip up La Liga with Barcelona. Paul Pogba would certainly be tempting, but he hasn't done much defensively since he left Juve, averaging under 3 tackles and deceptions a game in all 3 years at United, and would almost certainly cost about as much as a small stadium. So a cheaper and possibly better choice would be Tanguy Ndombele, Lyon's 22-year-old star who has enjoyed another spectacular year in France. With between 3 and 4 defensive actions per 90 since his switch to Lyon, Ndombele has the defensive intelligence to help Casemiro in the centre of the park, and he can also burst forward, completing around 3 dribbles a game for Leganés, with around 3/4 of his attempts coming off. His passing is strong too, with 1.6 chances created a game, over 65 phases, and 78% of his long balls finding their target across the whole campaign. With intelligence, physicality, and plenty of room to grow, Ndombele will be a worthy heir to Modric and give Real someone who could go toe-to-toe with de Jong in El Clasico for the next decade. 2. Find Ramos' heir. Modric and Kroos aren't the only ones approaching the curtain call on the world stage. Sergio Ramos is now 33, and though he will remain at Real Madrid next season, after rumours his 14-year stay would come to an end in 2019, the Spaniard is no longer the player he was. He missed 10 league games last season, and his tackle numbers were the joint lowest of his time at the Bernabeu, whilst his interceptions also hit a record slump. Always reliant on pace and physicality, it's hardly surprising that a drop in both has proved a problem for Ramos. But unlike Barcelona, who have Titi, Lenglet and Todibo ready to take over from Piqué, Real seem only to have Varane, with Vallejo receiving just 300 league minutes last year and Nacho already 29 and hardly an example of future-proofing. Eder Militao meanwhile looks to be an excellent addition to the roster, but the Brazilian was playing in his homeland under a year ago and at 21 seems unlikely to represent an immediate solution. So a top-class signing wouldn't go amiss, and with Hazard and Jovic arriving and Bale's future far from settled, Real might be unable to offer the fee and wages which Ajax would require for the world's outstanding defensive prospect, Matthijs de Ligt. So a cheaper, marginally and more experienced option could be Inter Milan's Milan Skriniar, who is just 24, but coming off a second strong campaign at the San Siro. A product of Sampdoria's famed production line which brought us Icardi, Lucas Torreira and Bruno Fernandes, Skriniar turned the club a £20 million profit after just 1 year in Genoa, and is a perfect modern centre-back, combining size, speed, intelligence and skill. At 6'2", he's tough to get around, as shown by his 75% tackle success rate, the same as Piqué, and overall he wins the ball back 3 times a match, a big number for a centre-back in a side which maintains 57% possession, the most in Serie A. But more importantly, Skriniar would fit into a super club's passing game. With 68 passes a game, he's third in the inter-squad and ahead of every other defender, hitting nearly 4 long balls a match and finding his man with 68% of those, a higher number than Leo Bonucci on 56, who has Ronaldo and Mandzukic to aim at. Though he'd be likely to cost upwards of £70 million, Inter have the oldest squad in Serie A at 28.9 years old. Diego Godin arriving on a free and a new manager coming in, meaning that a big sale, even of their star defender, could be a smart way to rebuild. Always equipped with a deadly attack, it's Real's defence which has seen them struggle against Atleti and Barca over the last decade. Skriniar could be the man to fix that. 1. Splash the cash. Stinginess isn't something we generally associate with Real Madrid, but when you look at their spending over the last few years, it's perhaps unsurprising that they haven't been competitive in La Liga. Between the beginning of the 2013-14 season when they brought in Gareth Bale and the end of the 2018-19 campaign, Real tallied a net spend of just €103 million, thanks to around €400 million of player sales offsetting their big money acquisitions. By comparison, during that period, Barcelona brought in an almost identical sum, €408 million, but spent vastly more, shelling out €750 million for a net spend of €357 million, despite also investing in an expansion of the Camp Nou at the same time. In fact, Madrid's outlay in the last 6 years is a third of Arsenal's in the last 3, and even Atletico Madrid have almost equalled their richer rivals in the market. Of course, a lack of spending isn't always an issue, as it's understandable that Real Madrid didn't want to turn over their squad too much over the last half-decade. A brilliant generation of talent meant that the smart move was to try and maximise trophy return while they were all together, and as a result, 9 players started 3 or more of Real's 4 Champions League finals between 2013 and 2018. But of those 9s, 1 has already left, Cristiano Ronaldo, and another 5 are over 29, with Casemiro, Varane and Carvajal the only relative neophytes at 27, 26 and 27 respectively. That means that the squad turnover is not just advisable but inevitable, and while the additions of Militao and Jovic will start to readdress that balance, Eden Hazard is already 28 and unlikely to represent a long-term solution to the side's age problem. This is perhaps why Zinedine Zidane jumped ship in 2018, seeing that the team would need a painful rebuild in order to equal the spectacular success of his 2.5 years in charge. But the Frenchman is going to need to rid himself of his reliance on veterans too. While Man United have long tried to act like Real, Real need to stop acting like United and avoid tying up their cash in long-term contracts for short-term contributors. Once again making themselves the premier destination for the world's best youngsters could return Los Blancos to domestic glory, and who knows, even bring them back-to-back league titles, an achievement they've managed just once since 1990. So that was our 5 ways on how Real Madrid can get back to the top, but have we missed out on any other possibilities that you guys think could happen? Let us know in the comments below. If you've enjoyed this, why not check out the video on screen right now, and as always, don't forget to like and subscribe.